So today I'm really excited to have our guest. He's a friend of mine here in Kansas City, and I know his story, and I think you guys are all going to be really just blown away by it. So, John Fry, how are you?
Hi. So first of all, I guess what I want to say is that I'm really, really excited to be a part of what you guys are doing. I think that has the chance to I think uh, be helpful to a lot of people. So I'm very thankful that you guys have asked me to be a part of this. So
Thank you.
so I guess I'll start. So my name's John, and I'm a 47-year-old. I was born, I'm adopted, so I guess that's the general theme here is, adoption, right? And I was adopted and brought to the United States when I was about a year and a half old. Actually, what's funny is before Sarah and Louise asked me to come onto this, I called my mom, my adopted mother, last weekend, and I told her that I was going to be coming onto this podcast, and I wanted to get some information from her, but I also wanted to kind of let her know, hey, there's going to be some things that maybe if you happen to listen to this podcast might be difficult to hear. But like first of all, I want you to know that I absolutely love you and want you to know that things that I may say in there may seem like they're hurtful, but they're not. I mean, they may come across as hurtful, but I still want you to know I love you and that this is something I've need to do. So it was kind of like I almost was calling to her to kind of get her permission,
Yeah.
and she was good with it. Me and my mother have had a strained relationship. Liz Fry is my mother. We've had a very strained relationship up until about 6 years ago. So anyway, getting back to I was adopted when I was a year and a half old. I was brought here from Vietnam as part of something called Operation Baby Lift. And so I'm not going to talk a lot about Operation Baby Lift because it's been written about. There's Wikipedia pages. There's books been. But what happened was at the end of the Vietnam War, the South had fallen to the North, and Saigon was the capital of the South, and the Northern were marching in. And so I don't know who hatched the idea, but there was this idea that we are going to put a bunch of babies into airplanes and then fly them out of Vietnam and scatter them across the world, right? And if you read about it, there's some it's kind of controversial because some people will say it was the largest mass adoption event in the world, and then some people will say it was the largest mass kidnapping in the world. So whoever you're talking to, could spin it the way that they want to hear it. But nonetheless, I was one of those children. There was about 3,000 of us, and I happened to be at the time when I was before I was brought to the United States. I was in an orphanage in Saigon. It's referred to as Ho Chi Minh City, but it was Saigon at the time. And I was at an orphanage that was run by World Vision, and World Vision's still around. They're a huge organization. I believe they do a lot of good things in the world. They are a Christian based organization, but they are they run orphanages. Well, at the time they ran orphanages. I mean, what they do now is it's more like relief type efforts and those type of things. But anyhow, I was there's some vague records regarding my how I came to the United States. Essentially, I was at this orphanage in Saigon at least twice. The first time I was there, I had pneumonia, and so, but then somewhere in the records it shows that I guess somebody, I will say my mother, but somebody came back and got me and brought me home, and then at some point I was returned to the orphanage. And I think you have to understand that at the time during the war, I mean, there was a scarcity of food. I mean, it was a horrible thing. And so if you're a mother trying to raise a child or having a baby in that type of situation, you're gonna, there's not a lot of opportunities to take care of your child. And so I think from what I understand was that the orphanages were kind of like safe havens for children, right? So
I was going to
mothers,
ask that.
yeah,
I have read that that's why some people consider it the kidnapping, because a lot of mothers, I mean, there's bombs going off everywhere. They have no food. So they put the babies there to be safe
yeah,
and would come back and forth.
yeah, yep. So it was, so, it wasn't like an orphanage like you think of, maybe like Annie or
Right.
Oliver Twist, right?
Right.
We certainly weren't singing, but anyhow, we so you had these orphanages there, and like I said, I believe from my understanding is that families would take their children there because it was where they knew that they could get health care. It was a place where they could be safe because they could get fed, right? So so at some point, I got gathered up with the rest of these children, right? And what they did was I forget who the president was at the time, but they signed off on
Ford.
Was it
Ford.
Yeah, they basically, this was a good this was a feel good story that would was a humanitarian effort. We're going to come in here and save babies, right? And they pretty much the U.S. had gotten their asses kicked by in this war, right? For 30 years they gotten beat, right? And so this was kind of a way to like save some face and go out on a high note, right? So they, if you read the stories, the first plane that went out of Saigon with babies on it crashed, and half of the passengers died. It was like children, and crew members. So that was kind of a setback, obviously. But then I guess the subsequent airlifts out of that were successful. So I was on an airplane, and most of the children out of Vietnam went to either, my understanding was, United States, Canada, France, Australia, and maybe Great Britain, I think. So, mainly Western nations, developed countries, first world countries. And so what happened was, this is something I've known about all my life. Like I knew this story, but it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I decided that I was going through, I was going through a change in my life. There was like a painful transition. And part of that transition was due to I don't know, it's just like that transition was due to, I like to say, it was deferred emotional maintenance. Okay. Deferred emotional maintenance. There were things a long time ago that I should have dealt with, or delved into, that, made me who I am now, but also wounded me in such a way that, I wasn't able to be, I guess, present or be the person I wanted to be, especially in relationships, right? With like my wife, So I decided about 6 years ago that I was going to go full bore into looking into my adoption and where I came from, because I just, like, on a whim, decided, I'm going to go back to Vietnam, because that's where it seemed like, at the time, it seemed like, maybe some of these answers will be, maybe some of these questions will be answered, and maybe I can get some closure, right? So if I go back to Vietnam, right, and do this, that I would somehow mend some of those things that were, that were hurting inside me for so long, right? So, and I think I've listened to yours and your guys' podcast, and I've read other stories, and so I think adopted children, I suffer from very similar things that a lot of adopted children from, like mine manifest themselves like an abandonment issues, being able to be emotionally connected to people. It's like, I want to be emotionally connected. I want to be close to people, but then yet as soon as that happens, it's like, you're like, it's like you're drinking, you want to drink from a water fountain, but instead when it is present to you, you're being drowned by a fire hydrant, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much, and you just don't have a way to, for me at least, I don't have a way to process it, or I used to not be able to have a way to process it, right? So I decided I was going to go back to Vietnam and, work on my shit by going and like, trying to, reconnect with this place that I left, 46 years ago, 45 years ago, however, yeah. So in that time frame. So what happened was when I started going down that road, I did two things. I contacted World Vision because I wanted to see if there's any records, right, of how I got to the United States, which cargo plane I came on, where they were onboarding children, or they were bringing children in through various entry points and stuff like that. So I was curious, where that was at. What happened was I called World Vision, and I met the guy who's the archivist for World Vision, and he's a historian and archivist. And I told him my name, and I told him my date of birth and stuff. And so he was able to kind of go back and find some tidbits, not like there was no smoking gun. So basically I found out,
Did you find out your name, your birth
name?
name?
So my first name in Vietnamese is Ly, L-Y. And so I became naturalized. When I was adopted, I was here in the States until I was about 7. And then my parents went ahead and naturalized me, right? And so on my naturalization papers, there's my birth name's on there. And so I kind of had that, going for me. And then I contacted this archivist, and he was able to find out which plane I was on.
Wow.
And he was able to, there was some like record that showed that I was actually not born in Saigon, but I was actually born in a decently sized city that's south along, it's south, so if you look at Vietnam, it's kind of like it's long and narrow, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, so Hanoi's up in the north, that's the capital right now, and Saigon's down to, kind of the southern-ish area. And then further south along the Mekong Delta, there's a city called, I'm going to probably mispronounce this, but I think Canta. And so that's where it showed that I was born at.
Were you in the orphanage there, or were you in an orphanage in Saigon?
I was in the orphanage in Saigon. So
okay.
Somehow somebody who brought me up to Saigon made that journey up. When I was in Vietnam, I took a bus ride from Saigon down to Canta, and it was probably a 2-hour drive, right? In a bus on this is like modern roads now and stuff like that. So it's not during a war. So
it must have been a huge journey. Yeah.
So I have no idea how the folks that got me up to where I was at there, right? So that's where I was apparently born at. And this gentleman, he also, what he was able to do, and I forget his name, I can look it up. It's in my emails. He put me in contact with this woman, and her name's Elsie, I believe is her name, because I'm a Facebook friend with her, and I'm kind of embarrassed I don't know her name, but her and her husband were in Vietnam around the same time that I was there. And I think maybe I believe maybe the same orphanage that I was in. Now, I don't think our times that, overlapped, but she was there, at some point. And her husband, because her husband, if I remember right, her husband worked for World Vision, and she was either a volunteer or a nurse at the orphanage where I believe that I was at.
That's insane.
God. Wow.
So
let me ask you quickly.
Yeah.
So they took you, so you found out did you find out what cargo plane you were on and where it went, and then how you ended up where you ended up?
Yes, to a lesser extent, yes.
So you grew up where?
Well, okay, so what happened?
I know, but our audience doesn't.
Okay, so here's what happened. My parents, Liz and Jerry Fry, they're from the Midwest here, and they somehow ended up in California of all places, and we
Woo.
were living in Irvine at the time. And they did not believe they could have children, right? So this is a common trope amongst adopted children, right? Like if
Yes.
you want to have kids of your own, adopt a kid, right? Like,
Yes.
so they had been unsuccessful in having children, and so they had put their name. They had started the adoption process. Not the Operation Baby Lift. Like you didn't start the adoption process like knowing the Operation Baby Lift was going to happen, right? It was
Right.
just like we were already like, so they'd already been vetted because they had already gone through the adoption process. You know, my dad likes to tell me stories like, you know, like guys would show up and dig through their trash, right? Like so they're like doing background checks
Oh
on
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So so anyway, my mom and dad were already gone down the road of trying to adopt a child. And then if I remember correctly, talked to my mother, you know, they basically, when Operation Baby Lift kind of came on, they basically called my parents up and they gave them a very short amount of time. They're like, all right, do you guys want a kid? Okay, we've got a kid. He's coming, right? He's like on the plane right now, you know, or like, and they didn't even know if it was gonna be a boy or girl. It's like, we have a children. We like, you know, the stork is coming, right? And so
literally out of the sky.
Yes, like literally coming, right? And so I came into the US, and that's where the timeline's a little vague. I was about a year and a half old when I got here. And then I was in maybe one or two foster homes briefly, you know, like maybe like I would probably measure those in like weeks, you know, weeks or months, not, you know, and so I believe that my mother and father finally, you know, got me and took me in when I was, you know, probably like, I asked my mom this. I think I was probably like maybe 20 months old at the time. So, you know, funny story. So I guess they didn't have good, like the clothes I was wearing were like, you know, like I guess just whatever they had, you know, to give children whenever they got here. And so my mother thought, you know, she told me the story that when I came in there, I had these huge feet. Like it was like you know, so here I am like almost like not quite a 2-year-old, a little bit less than a 2-year-old, but like I was wearing like shoes that were like, you know, like 4 or 5 sizes bigger than me. And then come to find out what it was is they just put the wrong, like they put like, you know,
threw some shoes on.
Yeah, whatever shoes I could find, right? So that's
yeah. Aw.
So I will say that when I first met my mother and father for the first time, I think my mom will say this, and you know, this is where things get a little, I guess I went to my father first, you know, like I went to hug my father first instead of hugging my mother. And I've always got the impression that, you know, that you know, I think that maybe hurt my mom's feelings, right? And so
Like set the tone or something?
possibly, you know.
Well, she's a mom who can't have a baby. She's waiting for this baby. The baby comes, you know, and she's so excited. And then that's that, you know.
Yeah. You know, and so when my mom finally listens to this, we'll probably have to have a talk about this again, right?
Right.
So
Aww.
my brother James, my adopted brother James, or my yeah, it's like I'm the adopted kid, and my brother James, he came along. So I was born in 73. He was born in 76, July of 76. So,
and Operation Baby Lift didn't happen until 75, right?
Yes.
So you had about a year or
yes, a yearish, you know, I think, you know, I don't know, but yeah, something like that. That I was you know, I was the only child there for a while. Right?
And your brother's not adopted.
No. So I have a younger brother and a younger sister. So my brother, I have a younger brother. His name's James, and he's about a year and a half. No, he's like 3 years younger than me, and 2.5, 3 years younger. And then I have a sister named Sarah. Also, she spells it without an H, and she she's about 5 years younger than I am. So,
and you're the oldest. That's interesting.
I am, and so I always felt that being the oldest and being there before my brother and sister actually made it easier, I think, to blend with them, you know, like because it wasn't like it wasn't like the family was established before I got there. You know, I was there before they were there.
Yeah.
So I think growing up, they saw me as just one of them, right?
Yeah. The older brother.
Which is,
speaking of blending, though, that's a word I wanted to. Was the fact that you were from a different country, an entirely different culture, at all ever addressed or talked about or anything like?
no, I mean, just it was talked like it was just like a matter of fact, you know, just like just you're from Vietnam, you know. I could have been from, you know, I could have been from Vietnam, I could have been from Antarctica. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. My parents, in my opinion, growing up, which I think was good, because I think it's helped me as an adult, but it's made it tough as a child, was that my parents did not raise me at all with any of my Vietnamese culture. There was zero, you know, it was like you are you are one of us, like you are one of us. So like there's like we don't see any difference between you, you know, and you are one of us, right?
Which is a double-edged sword, of course,
Yes,
because that's
yes.
so it's so loving, and then it's also like, oh, but you're not honoring where you're actually from. Yeah.
And you were in a small town. It was.
I was just, well, we moved around, and so we lived out in we lived out in, hold on a second. You're saying that it's going to die here in a second. Is there a way we can pause for a second? Just for a second?
Yeah.
Like a.
So you were grew up in a small town?
So we moved around Oklahoma quite a bit, and I wouldn't say a small town. Like, okay, I mean, probably, you know, between. I mean, sometimes I lived in Tulsa, which is a decent sized town. Sometimes we lived in. So we moved around a lot. So I wouldn't say that. I would not call it like I lived like rural, you know, where, you know, there was only like, you know, 10 kids in a classroom type thing. You know what I mean? But it was small townish Oklahoma at times, right? I guess what I would say is the size of the town didn't matter how I was treated, right? So I was treated the same way whether I was in a big town or a small town by my peers.
And was that what was that experience like?
Well, so I will say, so you know, we were just touched on how I was raised basically as one of my parents' own, right? And so I grew up you know, thinking and believing that I was the same as them. And I remember the first time, I mean, I knew that I was adopted, and I knew it was Vietnamese, but I didn't know that kids could be such, you know, jerks, right?
Oh,
and so I remember we were out at the lake one time. I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, and I was playing with my brother and my sister, and some kids came up, and they started this older boy started kind of, I don't remember what he said, but he was kind of making racial slurs about it, right?
Wow.
And it was at me, right? And I was like, I was like, hold on, like time out, like why are you doing that to me? Like, we're on the same team here, guy. Like why
You're like, who are you
making
looking at?
fun of me? Yeah, like I didn't understand it, right? Like we're on the same team here, you know. You got your you know, and it was the fact that I was Asian, right? And he was making jokes about it, right? And picking on me.
Wow.
And so that was the first time that I can remember of being made fun of. And I think I was probably about 9 years old. And then as I got older, it escalated, right? But
in high school years?
Oh, junior high, high school.
Like just the guys
kids making fun of me, making jokes, making racial jokes and stuff. And so, but here's the deal. So if you ever met my family, and I'm going to like tread lightly here, but my family are pretty like, they're not passive people, right? They are, you know, they are, I mean, they are not passive people. I mean, they are assertive, and I would say they're beyond assertive, right? And so I was raised like that, right? So like it was kind of like you just don't take shit from people, right? Type of thing. And so I was raised like that too. And so, I think you couple that on top of the fact that at some point in my childhood, I harnessed anger, right? Like I realized that anger was my friend. Like anger kept me from feeling these emotions, this hurt, right? So I could like, instead of being, hurt or sad or whatever it is, I could use anger as this tool to deal with that, right? And so I fought a lot growing up. Like I would fight, like I was like all the time getting in fights with kids at school, right?
You were scrappy.
Yeah, I don't know if it was scrappy. I just did. I mean, I was it like, first of all, it's being an angry person anyway as a child, and
Do you think your anger was stemmed do you feel like your anger was definitely internal, or was it learned? Like, do you know what I'm asking?
Both.
Okay.
Yes. I will say that I'm probably gonna like my family will probably have words with me a little bit about this, but yes, my family as children we were angry people. I think I would say that. Yes, I will say that we're angry people. So when my family calls me up, I will defend that. We were angry people, right? So, and on top of that, I was an angry child. I was angry. I used anger as a way to avoid my feelings, my emotions, right? Not to have to deal with them. And so that fed in with my ability to kind of survive, right? And to, when somebody would make fun of me or say something to me, I was like, I would fight them, right? Or I would try to fight them. And so that happened pretty regularly. I will say that as I got older, I was a awkward kid. If I showed you, like, so every once in a while, I'll on Facebook, I'll post a picture of what I looked like as a kid. So up until like I was like 7 or 8 years old, I was like thin as a rail, right? And then probably like up until like I turned around 10, I kind of chubby, and I had like bad haircuts and just like had zero game, right?
It's like you already have everything going on, then zero game with the haircut.
Yes, yeah. So it was like,
take
this person that's in a kind of a bad situation anyway, emotionally, and then like let's let this happen to him, right? And so it was definitely, like if I showed you a picture of what I looked like then, and I look now, like who I am now, I like definitely was what you would call a late bloomer, right? Yeah. I was a late bloomer, right? Like I was like your cheese or wine that got better with age, right? So yeah, I was definitely.
You were one thing you did tell me, I hope you'll share about the eating when you were like the meal your parents took.
Oh yeah, so I was talking to so I was talking to my mom. So before I came on the podcast, I called my mom, like I said, and was asking her about. I was like, first of all, I was wanting to kind of clean up the timeline a little bit, right? So I was wanting to, but my mom and dad used to tell me this story that when I was about maybe about 2 years old, I think, they took me to a Mexican restaurant and for whatever reason, bought me an adult plate of food, right? I feel like who buys a 2-year-old adult plate of food? I mean, I thought you'd buy them like those little, a taco and some Jello, and they get, and little placemats you can color on or something.
Yeah.
Like that, maybe that didn't exist back in the 70s. So they bought me an adult plate of food, and I guess I ate the entire thing, right?
Oh.
And so I got to say that when I first came here to the States, my mom said that I actually had a, kind of a bloated stomach. So like children that you see, like the Feed the Children Africa type situation. So I had something like that, right, where my stomach was bloated when I first came here, and so my mom will like say that I was an excellent eater, right? Like I ate everything you put in front of me. And then she did remind me, and I don't remember if this, she told me that when I was like in elementary school, they found out that I had been hiding food in the mattress, like not my mattress, like box spring. So they said that I cut open my box spring and was squirreling food away in there, like a chipmunk or something like that for wintertime.
Wow.
And so I don't remember this, but I will say that I am a person that when I was a child, like, like whatever was put in front of me, I would eat it. Like, the idea of like not cleaning my plate, just like, I mean, I wouldn't do that. Right. So
Yeah.
I think that there's probably, I think for some period of my childhood, there was like this underlying fear of, scarcity of food, so it's like for whatever reason, well, I mean, it's not whatever reason. I mean, it's like, hell, you're born into a war, you're starving. And so I think I was, somehow conditioned that, I need, like when food was, when food was presented to me, I need to eat it all because I don't know if I'm going to get another meal. Right.
Yeah.
That's probably lesser of my story as an adult, but it was something that my mom, my mom told me, she's like, you were a great eater. It's like telling a lion, you were a great eater, right? So, I don't know where were we?
Well, so we were just kind of talking about the anger and how that was your way of avoiding your feelings. And then at which point, like, reading this book and just talking to adopted people and finding out like how we cope with feelings, and people do it differently. Like there's the pleaser, there's the this, and there's the that, like that dynamic of, so yours was to be angry and avoid. When did you finally connect the dots with your like that? Oh, everybody has that maybe light bulb moment, like, oh my God, I was adopted and I finally understand why I went through this and went through that. But
I think it was probably in the last 5 or 6 years. I'll be honest. Me and my wife were going through a separation, and it forced me to really take a look at my stuff, right? Because, like I said, it was deferred maintenance. I knew that there was things going on in me for a long time, emotions, feelings, and I've always been an emotional person, right? But I've also been a person like I'm very guarded and don't, for the longest time, wouldn't allow myself to drop down and experience those emotions, right? I remember the first time I used to tell this story that I'm talking to you about right now, like being adopted, and I could tell it hundreds of times, right? But it was just factual, like I was adopted, I was born in Vietnam, And I remember it's this good friend of mine, a good friend of mine named Will, who is still a good friend of mine. And I remember telling him the story, and then he just paused and he says, "Man, that story just speaks to me, And it's like, I forgot what he said, but basically the way he reacted to it was kind of like he was telling me or signaling to me, it's okay to feel sad about that because I'm sad about that. Hearing that story makes me sad. And so he didn't say that it was okay to be sad, but by hearing him be sad about it, I realized that, it was okay to have those emotions about that story. Right? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. It used to be like a factual train for you. And then all of a sudden someone's like touched by your story that you're kind of not letting that in.
Yeah.
Me too. I did the same thing. So I know I can relate to that. Just like, yes,
So I will tell you that I do suffer, like I said, from a lot of what other adopted children probably suffer from, attachment and not being able to abandonment. Oh my God, abandonment issues are just like, it's like, yeah, that's like that's like the bane of my existence, abandonment and attachment. I'm the kid that would go to summer camp and like get home from summer camp and be devastated, right? Because I went to church summer camp and like it was like everything was so great, and when I got home I was just like devastated. Right? I easily can, if I allow myself, become attached to people, right? Or I can easily feel that somebody's going to abandon me, because that was what I experienced, that whole thing. I was, so I remember talking to this woman that that worked at World Vision, right? I told you she worked at the orphanage. I remember calling her up. I was really excited. We had kind of started talking on Facebook, and she was super nice. So I called her up, and I'm just talking to her. And I remember asking her the story. Like, I remember like talking to her, and I was like really curious on like how the children were treated in the orphanages, because I thought that was really important, And by this time, I've already had, I've got 3 children. I've got a son named Dustin, who was my wife's. He's not my biological son, but I raised him as my own since he was like a year and a half old. I've got a daughter who's 17 years old. Her name's Indigo, and I have a son I have a 13-year-old named Cactus. And the funny thing is, both Cactus and Indigo, their middle name is my first name. So it's Indigo Lee, Ly, or Cactus Lee. And Cactus is not his given name, but it's his name, Cactus. Okay. So where was I going with? I know. So I am familiar with how people bond with their children. I've seen it firsthand, right? As being a father and seeing, their mother bond with them through, the childbirthing, that whole process. So I get that. I mean, that's like you guys have talked about that, and that's been studied so much. And if people can't figure that out, I don't know what's wrong with people. I mean, it's just like, it's just like science, right? I mean, nurture, nature, it's all together, right? And so I remember asking this woman, I said, so I just have a quick question. I was like, did you guys ever hold those babies?
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, like, did you hold them and hold them and hold them, and like love them? Because you see, like you might have been feeding them and you might have been taking care and changing their diapers, but you can imagine that these babies are scared, and sad and lonely because they're like, we're taken away from wherever they're at, so I remember asking her that, and like, she did not know this, and she'll probably hear this when I'll probably share this podcast, but she didn't know this. I had my phone on silent because I was like crying as I was asking her this question, like, did you, did you hold those babies? Like, that was like an important thing. She's like, yeah, we held those babies, So,
yeah, you wonder, because you had a long time before you were with your family. So it's like, and
that's almost an older child in a weird,
almost toddler.
Toddler. Well, that is, yeah.
And it's very important, if you've gotten love or.
Yeah. So I have a confession is that as an adult, somehow I read something I've been in a lot of therapy, like as an adult. God, like, I've told Sarah, like, I could have bought a nice car for the amount of money that I spent on therapy, right? In fact, when I finish this podcast, I'm going to go see my therapist, and I love her to death. She's probably saved my life several times, like literally and emotionally, physically, right? So, but I somewhere read something like the other thing that I'm struggling with is that, there's like inside me, like I think inside a lot of people exists like this child, right? This child that's sad and scared and lonely, and it's touched all the time, like if I allow it to be touched, by people in my life or by life experiences. And one thing that I am trying to do as an adult is realize that at the end of the day, I'm the only person that can be that to take care of that child, right? I mean, I don't have anybody left. Like at the end of the day, there's nobody left, right? At the end of the day, I'm the only person that's going to be able to take care of that child that's at that orphanage, crying. And I can remember, like, and I've done like this projection where I like fall asleep and I'll be thinking about that baby, and like I am there talking to that child and holding it and loving it and embracing it and telling you, like, I will never abandon you,
Yeah. Oh, makes me cry.
That's really what it is. It's that, for me at least, it's like this constant fear of being abandoned. And I said, I can't figure this shit out. Like that I am the one that has to be there for myself, right? Because as much as you want to rely on somebody else that loves you, you know, your husbands, wives, children, they're all like, they can all be taken away from you at any moment.
And they
right?
can't they can't fill that. That's
right. They
it takes
cannot.
a long time to figure that out.
Yeah. And so, and I'm still figuring it out. You know, I sleep with a teddy bear that has, so I was in the Navy when I was younger. I tell people that are like, really? You're in the Navy? So I was in the Navy, and I have my dog tags from when I was in the Navy. And so I've got this teddy bear that I sleep with that has my dog tags on. This is, you know, it's John Fry. And so, and that teddy bear is me. You know, it's like, that's like I am. So I, you know, at the end of the day, when I'm alone, I don't have anybody else, I fall asleep, you know, holding this teddy bear.
That's beautiful.
Actually, I was recently on travel for work. I left my teddy bear in a hotel room, right? And the people called me and they're like, we found a bear in your room, but it seems like it's probably a pretty important thing, right? Because they figured it out, right? So I called my coworker who was up in the area and I said, hey, I need you to go get my bear for me, right?
Can you get my teddy bear?
He was totally cool with it. He was totally cool with it, you know.
Like, whatever you got to do, dude. Whatever you got to do, dude.
Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know where we're at as far as my story. I will say that having been raised, so as an adult, I'm okay with being Vietnamese. Like that's like I am totally. In fact, it's probably served me well being Vietnamese, being Asian. At various times in my life, when I have longer hair, I get mistaken for other nationalities, right? So growing up in Oklahoma, I would actually, I'm a little, I don't say I'm embarrassed, but you know, I would play myself. I would pretend like I was Native American when I would meet people because it was more acceptable to be Native American than Asian at times, right? So
that's
America.
Yeah. So
fucking America.
So I would blend in as a Native American. When I go out in the West, like you know, Arizona or in that, you know, in that area, you know, there's a lot of Native Americans out there. So I blend in very well there. When I'm in visiting Mexico, I can kind of pass myself off as Mexican, right? So the joke is I have a good friend of mine and he's like, so you're like the Lou Diamond Phillips, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, like what is Lou Diamond Phillips? I mean, like, you kind of know what he is, but you kind of don't, right?
He plays so many roles.
Yeah, and like jokingly, I have like at least 3 months I get to celebrate at work. You know, I work for the government, so like, you know, they're very diverse, and they promote a diverse workforce, and so, you know, I'm like a, you know, I get Native American month, I get Hispanic month, and I get Asia Pacific Islander month. So I get to celebrate lots of months, right? They get to count me a bunch of times. You know, they get But
I had a question. Can I ask you a question? When you went to Vietnam, did you find anything out about your Sarah may know this, but I don't know this. Did you find anything out about your birth mother or family or anything?
No, that's a so I went to Vietnam, do not speak Vietnamese. And I'm also I'm 5'10", I probably weigh about 180, 85 pounds, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many Vietnamese friends you have.
Yeah.
But like,
you're not the norm.
They're like smaller statured people, right? They're like in general, you know, in general, they're smaller, shorter than I am, right? And so when I was there, I kind of stood out, right? And
I wonder, sorry to interrupt. Maybe I've asked you this before, but I wonder if your birth father was like a GI.
Nope, I already gone down that road. I did the 23andMe, and yeah, I was hoping that my birth father was British. Then I could like go around and try to speak with a British accent, right? That's what I found out that I could. But no, I'm not. Like about 2 or 3 years ago, I did the 23andMe, and I am like, there's like, yeah, straight up, no bones about it, Asian, right? So like, Asian,
no bones
Asian,
about it.
Yeah, Asian. So yeah, I was hoping like something exotic, you know, like Swiss or you know, no, it wasn't it. You know, I will tell you this, going back to Vietnam was emotionally I thought it was going to be more healing than it was.
Hmm.
It wasn't as healing that I was hoping it would be. And I think I've talked to Sarah about this, recently in conversation. When you don't know the answer to something, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's a question out there, you don't know the answer, then you can make up your own answer in your head, right? Like the whole GI thing, right? Like, oh, that's why I'm so tall, because I'm, that's why I'm like, that's what I have a bigger frame, because I obviously am half, French, Canadian, German, whatever GI was there, right? But that's not the truth. And so I think part of not wanting to go back to Vietnam was I could make up my own stories. I could construct my own reality in my head about what it was going to be like going back there, right? Because I really thought going back there was going to be this like groundbreaking thing, and it wasn't. It was actually really hard. Not speaking the language. It's a culture that's totally it's like unlike our Western culture, like about the furthest thing you can have, and I didn't have a translator. I was alone. I did a lot of traveling. And it was, I wrote a little blog when I was there. I was writing some little blogs, and I would meet women all the time, like as I was walking along, and I would, I'd be, could that be my mom? Could that be my mom? Like I'd be like looking at people, I was like, could that be my mom? Just like things like that. There was, I think sometimes when I would speak to people, there was an expectation that I would be able to speak Vietnamese, and I didn't. And so it was like truly a stranger in a strange land, right?
Yeah.
And then also going back to Vietnam, I had survivor's remorse, No, Vietnam now is a very different.
Survivor's guilt, you mean?
Guilt, yeah, survivor's remorse, guilt. Yeah, right, thank you. Survivor's guilt, right? So my having come here and where we're at in this world and the life we live is really luck of the draw, right? We could have, it's really luck, and I just, I guess you could say that I won the lottery by being able to be on that plane and come here, living the life I have. But I've also wondered, like, what would have my life been if I stayed in Vietnam, and what would that have looked like for me? Would I have been, maybe I wouldn't have had good health care. Maybe my teeth wouldn't be as bad as they are now, like maybe a little bit worse than they are now. Maybe I would, maybe my nutrition would be different. But, I would have been with, I guess, my people, I would have been in my culture. Yeah. So you don't know, right? But I did experience survivor's guilt when I was there, because I saw there's still extreme poverty in Vietnam, right? Yeah. And I'm guessing being an orphan, you probably are not at the, you're probably going to be, maybe on your chances of being successful are going to probably be less, than coming from a family and, being raised in the orphanage and stuff. So yeah, so I experienced a survivor's guilt as I was going around. What else happened when I was there? I did go back to, I went down to that town where I was born at, Quinto, and hung around there for a while. But, in the end, it did not provide me the closure that I thought it might.
Yeah.
And so that was a little, I guess, disappointing, because it took a monumental, I expended a lot of emotional capital to get the courage to go back to Vietnam.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, just to even make the trip.
Yeah. And, and so it did not, I think the ending did not, it wasn't what I was hoping it was. I'll probably go back there again.
And maybe, with advances in technology or whatever, it might still be that you'll find somebody at some point, if you want to, that
I've thought about that, so like, I've heard your guys's, I remember when my daughter Indigo was born. So I have an adopted son, Dustin, who's my wife's biological son. And so for the first 10 years of his life, he was an only child, and I went to so like I had really struggled with wanting to have my own biological child, right? But first of all, being an adopted child, I never wanted to send any kind of signals to Dustin that he was any less than, right? And so I went to great lengths to, it was a lot of discernment before, we went down this road of having, my own biological child. And so when Indigo was born, I can remember when she was born, I was like so excited. And then I like ran away to the bathroom and just cried, right? Because, and then it was like, finally, I was not alone. And I know that I was not alone, and I remember posting that on Facebook a couple of years ago. Like every time she has a birthday, I'm like, I'll say, hey, like, you have no idea how much I love you and how much you mean to me. And that, up until your birth, I was really alone, because you guys have talked about this. If you're adopted, okay, you see, okay, my brother, my adopted brother, can see himself in my father, can see himself in my mom, our younger sister Sarah, our cousins, right? You see yourself, you see those, you guys talked about this, you see the euphemisms, you see like little traits, characteristics, that we pick up. I think it's nurture and nature, right? That are there.
Yeah.
And being adopted and not having anybody like that was, I didn't have that, right? I have no family history, like zero, So that's easy. Like whenever I go to the doctor, they're like, "Do you have any family history of cancer?"
Nope.
Nope. I can just mark there really quick, right? So, so it is kind of beneficial sometimes. But when my daughter was born, yes, I was not alone. I was no longer alone. And I will also say that it's probably one of the first times in my life, after holding her and carrying her and caring for her, that I was able to really, to experience love, right?
Yeah.
Because
we both can
I
relate
was
to this.
giving love. There was this thing. There's this child that I unconditionally it was like I didn't have to be taught it. It was just instinctual. I love this thing, right? I love this child, right? And and I think that was helpful in me being able to. I still have a hard time accepting love. I still have a hard time receiving it, but I'm definitely better for it having Indigo. And I also have a son, Cactus. He's like I said, he's 13, and he is also, I have similar bond with him, but since he came in second, he doesn't, it wasn't as groundbreaking with him as it was my daughter Indigo.
Yeah.
So I definitely have I won't say stronger bond. I have a different bond with her than I have with my son. It's no less more, or it's not. It's just different, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is
amazing.
This has just been I know we could talk all night or ask questions over and over, but we have to wrap it up at some point. I think this has just been. Hearing you talk is really emotional.
Yeah, I'm very emotional. I'm just blown away. You're an amazing person too.
Thank you. I think Sarah said this, everybody has a story to tell, right?
Yes.
I don't know if everybody has a story to tell, and I think it's also how they tell it, so some people have, maybe a not as good of a story, but are able to tell their story better. But this is a story that it's not that I've always been able to tell the story, but to be able to tell the story and experience the emotions that are associated with it, for me, is more important than telling the story. For me at least.
Well, it sounds like you are, maybe nobody would describe themselves as emotionally healthy, but it certainly sounds like you have a healthy way of looking at things, and the way you're trying to address these issues is, head on. It's a scary, scary thing. And it's really
brave.
Impressive to do that. Wow. It's hard, like many people just run away from it. Myself included have run away so much in my own life. So hearing you be so vulnerable and talk so
Yes.
honestly and has been really great. It's been really, I feel like
I feel enriched.
I feel really lucky to have you
Yes.
on this podcast.
Me too. I feel enriched from this experience.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate, and I'm very happy to have been a part of what you guys are doing here and stuff. I think I hope it's beneficial to somebody out there that's.
I think it would be beneficial to others.
I definitely think so. I think a lot of people are going to really feel a lot when they hear this story.
I do too.
Okay, well,
on that note,
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, John.
John, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.